The Apology is purportedly an account of the proceedings at Socrates' trial. Not complete as a trial transcript as such, the text gives us only an account of Socrates' defense. The word apology comes from the Greek apologia and simply means defense. In addition to Plato's text, Xenophon also wrote an apology of Socrates, which contains a somewhat different version. Plato's goal in writing the work seems clearly to be to demonstrate the injustice of the verdict and to vindicate his teacher. Plato also uses the opportunity to give a sympathetic portrait of Socrates, referring to different aspects of his life, family, and philosophical activity. The work can also be seen as a defense of the philosophical life per se. Socrates was accused of corrupting the minds of the youth of Athens and not worshiping the gods of the city. Socrates' accusers were a group of men who felt wronged by him. Socrates believes that his accusers are angry with him since he exposed their true ignorance publicly. Miletus is said to represent the angry poets whose ignorance Socrates had demonstrated, and Lycon, the angry orators, and Antius, the angry craftsmen and political experts. In Xenophon, Antius is portrayed as accusing Socrates for having corrupted his son. The text of the Apology is divided into three parts, or three speeches by Socrates. In the first of these, he defends his innocence against the charges raised against him. In the second speech, Socrates, having been found guilty, is given the opportunity to suggest an alternative penalty to the one the accusers propose. Finally, in the third speech, Socrates has the opportunity to address the jury one last time after the death penalty has been confirmed. Socrates begins by pointing out that he has long been a victim of slander and malicious rumor, and he tries to set the record straight so that this kind of thing does not have an adverse effect on the jury. To this end, he recounts the mistaken conceptions about him that were in circulation at the time. One of these is that he was a natural philosopher, quote, one who dabbles in theories about the heavenly bodies. As Socrates indicates, the implication with this claim is that natural philosophers reject traditional religious belief and deny the existence of the gods. Along the same lines, Socrates mentions the caricature that the comic writer Aristophanes made of him in The Clouds. In this work, Socrates is portrayed as pursuing a number of absurd academic inquiries, such as trying to determine how far a flea can jump. This is a caricature not just of the person of Socrates, but of philosophy as an enterprise as such. It was also claimed that Socrates was a specious reasoner who made, quote, the weaker argument the stronger. This was a claim that was often heard about the sophists, who were not interested in determining the truth of the matter, but instead in simply winning the argument and gaining some personal advantage thereby. As noted, Socrates is especially keen to distinguish himself from the sophist. And a key issue in this regard is that he does not charge people for instruction. He mentions a number of well-known sophists and says that he wishes that he had the knowledge that they did in order to be able to instruct other people. But unfortunately, this is not the case. This claim of admiration is presumably ironic, since in what he goes on to say, it's clear that he doubts very much that the sophists are in possession of any real knowledge about how best to train young people. After distinguishing himself from the sophists, Socrates does concede that he in fact has a certain kind of knowledge which others do not. He then goes on to explain this by means of a story about his friend Chaerephon, whom we met in the Gorgias. Socrates recounts that Chaerephon visited the oracle at Delphi and asked if there were anyone wiser than Socrates, and the answer of the god Apollo, given through the priestess of Pythia, was that no, there was not. Socrates recounts having been taken aback by this, since he did not regard himself as having any special knowledge about anything. He then decided to try to refute the oracle by finding other people who were more knowledgeable than he, and so he went around to different experts in different professions, assuming that it would be easy to show that they knew more than he did in respect to their particular field of expertise. However, to his surprise, Socrates discovered that these people pretended to know a lot more than they actually did, and in this regard were self-deceived with respect to their own claims to know. At length, after running through a number of purported experts and revealing the shallowness of their claims to knowledge, Socrates is compelled to conclude that, in fact, he has more knowledge than the others simply by virtue of the fact that he realizes that he knows nothing and does not pretend to know what he does not. Socrates thus interprets the words of Apollo at the oracle to mean that, quote, human wisdom is worth very little or nothing at all. Socrates is the wisest in the sense that he recognizes this in contrast to other people who live in delusions about what they know. This is Socrates' explanation for why he goes around Athens and pesters his fellow citizens about what they know. He conceives of this as a divine mission, since Apollo in effect asked him to investigate whether there was someone who was truly knowledgeable about anything. He explains, quote, that's why I still go around, even now, on this search of mine, instigated by the god, so that if I think anyone, whether fellow citizen or foreigner, might be wise, I'll sniff him out. And whenever I conclude that he isn't wise, I come to the aid of the god by demonstrating that he isn't, end quote. There's a self-sacrificing element in this, since this divine mission has been all-consuming and has prevented Socrates from participating in civic affairs as he should, and even from earning a living. This is an important point since Socrates indicates that his daily activity of questioning people is not something that he's done of his own volition. Instead, he conceives of himself as simply following the orders of the god Apollo. This is in line with the conception of agency that we've seen in our other texts. The heroes Gilgamesh and Odysseus were unable to do anything without the assistance of the gods. Likewise, in Sophocles and Herodotus, the gods determined everything that would happen, ensuring that justice is served and humans are mere pawns in this larger game. In all of these cases, the human will is recognized to play a very minimal role. Socrates likewise has this same conception. There's nothing that he can achieve on his own. Instead, he can only try to follow the orders of the god, even though he would presumably prefer to do other things, such as take care of his family and earn a living. He's obliged by the greater divine force to act in the way he does. Once again, we can contrast this to our own sense of agency, where we believe that as individuals we can achieve much more by our own will and ability. This is a modern view in contrast to the ancient one.